Welcome to this month's episode of the PA Path. I'm Emma Sellers with PAEA. This episode is brought to you by Southern Illinois University School of Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree, now enrolling for summer 25 and spring 26. I'm delighted to have Jessica Scholz as our guest. Jessica is the Director of Client Support at Liaison International, the company that partners with PAEA to provide our CASPA application. She has been a member of the CASPA account team working directly with PA applicants in participating programs since 2008. Jessica, again, we are so excited to have you here today to just kind of talk about all things CASPA and application and all the good stuff that our students will need to know. So again, thanks for finding time in your busy schedule to join us.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
So why don't we just start with this big question? We tell our pre-PA students about CASPA, and, we use this word all the time. Can you tell us, what is CASPA? How do students use it? What is it useful for? Just give us kind of the lowdown on CASPA.
Absolutely. So CASPA is an acronym. It stands for Centralized Application Service for Physician Assistants, which is kind of a fancy way of saying it's like a one-stop shop for applying to PA programs all over the United States. And CASPA has been around since 2001. So we've done this for almost 25 years. So we have lots of experience kind of working to help applicants find programs which suit their needs and also help programs fill their classes with an applicant pool that will be successful at their institution. There are a lot of benefits to participating in the centralized platform. It means you can access applying to, again, as I said, the majority of PA programs, but that means you can compare their mission statements, their requirements, their deadlines, where they're located, different ways that you can compare and contrast all these programs and see which ones are probably the best fit for you. It also allows you to fill one primary application. You only have to put in your work experience, your volunteer experience, your academic history, your personal information, your essay, only one time. Even if you apply to like 10, 15 programs, you only have to do that information one time, which can be a real time saver. You also only have to send one set of documents into CASPA. So we collect your transcripts, we collect your letters of reference, your test scores, so it can reduce costs and stress. You only have to get these things in one time. We post them to your application, and all the programs you are interested in applying to can view that information in one place. You also can track your application through our system until it reaches your program, so you know what's going on at any time, day or night. You can log in and see what's going on. And you also have the benefit of being able to contact customer service. We're here to help you Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. We're on the phone, we're on email. There's live chat that's right on the application. If you need help, you can either talk to the chatbot that's on the application or ask to be directed to a live person to chat with. So there's a lot of benefits to participating in this program and trying to take some of the stress out of the application experience.
Definitely one-stop shop, for everyone. Definitely a great way to put that out. And I know that you've been working with CASPA, working with PA programs in general for a number of years. And while CASPA is that one-stop shop for folks to, kind of get all their information in and move through this process, what are some mistakes, though, that you see pre-PA or applicants make during this process?
Sure. There's a lot of common errors that applicants can make, which can lead to the process being more challenging for them. The best thing you can do to avoid making a mistake is do as much research as you can before the application cycle opens. So read through the CASPA Help Center. There is so much publicly available information there. You do not need to have an application account to access it. It's can be accessed right from the login screen without logging in. It's a searchable database. So if you have a specific question like, how do I send my GRE scores, or where do transcripts go, or how does verification work? You can type it right in there and it will bring up a whole load of information that you can read through at your leisure. And it's best to do this before you're in the process and you feel crunched for time. So the more of time and space you can give to familiarize yourself with that process, the more comfortable you'll feel about what's expected of you. And it can reduce some of that anxiety. It's also really important to understand what you're going to need to complete the application, right? So what information do you need to collect before you even get that? What academic history documents you're going to need? Who are your letter writers going to be? A lot of the schools have different individuals they would like to see you use as your letters of reference writers. So you can be prepared of kind of prepping those people for what that's going to look like and see if they'll agree to sponsor you on your application. You can research what tests you might need to take. Maybe there's a test that you haven't taken yet and you need to make time to do that. You can take a look at what schools want for, prerequisite courses and make sure that you've completed them. You can see what different deadlines are and what types of deadlines are out there. You can see what supplemental fees different schools have, or what additional materials they require outside of the CASPA application that you might want to think about gathering. So you want to just make sure that you're really looking at and examining, kind of being proactive about what you need to do both for the CASPA application, but also for the programs which interest you. You also want to make sure that you understand we have this application cycle, and it's kind of a fancy word, and I don't think everyone necessarily understands what that means. But the cycle runs from almost a full year. For CASPA, it begins in end of April of each year and runs to the beginning of April the following year. So we're just about wrapping up the current application cycle and getting ready to open the next one at the end of April. And what that means is that's a space of time in which the application is open to complete. And the schools that participate in the application all have deadlines throughout that time period, right? So the application opens in April, you might have a program that has an August deadline or another one that has a December deadline. And you need to understand not just kind of when those applications are due, but also if you were to be accepted to that program, when will that program start? So schools that accept applications for CASPA in the current cycle, which is almost finished, so this is the 2024-2025 cycle, a lot of those programs won't be starting till the fall of 2025. Some won't be starting till January of 2026, and that's for the cycle that's almost finished. So sometimes we get applicants who will start an application. They're like, well, I want to start this summer. And I'm like, well, that was last year's application. The current application's not for January a year from now. So it's really important to kind of look at the programs you're interested in, understand when they begin and which application you should be filling out. So when you should be doing your CASPA if you want to start school at this time frame, right? So that's an important one a lot of people don't necessarily take into consideration, but all the different start periods for the programs. The other thing you want to make sure you understand as regards to the programs themselves too is what their requirements are going to be, and that kind of affects this timeline as well. So some programs want all their prerequisite courses taken and completed prior to you applying. So if you apply with some of those courses still in progress or maybe a test that's not taken yet, they won't consider you for their program. Other programs have a certain number of courses they allow. They'll say you can have up to 2 courses that are a prereq still in progress, or maybe up to 3, or maybe they say you need to take this test and provide it to us before you would matriculate, but you don't have to have it at the time you apply. So there are some nuances to the individual program requirements about what they want finished before you begin your CASPA application and prepare to submit it that you want to be aware of, because you don't want to be halfway through the application process and realize that the school you want to apply to is going to require you to finish some courses that you're not going to finish in time. So it's very important that you kind of understand what their expectations are and align that to what your academic experience timeline is, and know that prepare to apply for what makes sense for you, that you're going to have the minimum items done that the schools are going to be looking for. Now, there's also research to be done about the CASPA application itself. I mentioned a little bit briefly some of the materials that you need that would have to be received by CASPA in order to process your application that it's good to be aware of. But there's also some important items as far as the application timeline itself. So even once you understand, okay, this is the application cycle I'm going to apply in, and these are the programs I'm going to apply in, these are their deadlines, this is when my program will start, should I be offered a seat? You then have to consider when CASPA opens, what your CASPA application timeline is going to be. So when you begin an application, filling it out, you have full control over that. You input the information that you have, but there are additional parts of the application that take time and that you want to understand. So, for example, you need to provide your academic transcripts to CASPA. They need to come directly from the programs. They can't be sent by you. And so you want to understand, okay, if I request my transcript from my school, how long does it take for them to provide it to CASPA? How long will it take for us to post it to your application once we receive it? It's not instantaneous. With electronic transcripts now, sometimes it's a lot faster than it was if it was sent by paper mail. However, it can take several business days once it's released to us. You also have to understand if you elect to do professional transcript entry. So, one of the parts of the CASPA application is we require that you input all of your academic coursework line by line. You basically recreate your transcript on the application. It's probably the most time consuming part of the application. And I know it's not everyone's favorite part of the application. It's basically doing some data entry. However, it's important because it allows CASPA to take all of the various transcripts from across the country in all different formats. So maybe you went to a school that gives semester hour credit. Maybe you went to a school that gives quarter hour credit. Maybe on your grade scale, B plus is worth a 3.3, and another school, B plus is a 3.5. All of these different schools have conflicting ways of calculating your GPA. And so what this system does, it allows it to be standardized and allow your B plus to be worth the same as another applicant's B plus who's applying to the same school, so that the schools are not looking at your information as apples versus oranges, but as apples versus apples. And so that's the point of it. We do, however, understand that that's a heavy lift for some people. So we do offer an optional, and I want to emphasize this is optional, data entry service to input those courses for you. If you prefer not to do it for whatever reason, it is an extra fee. However, the other piece that people don't quite understand, it also can delay your application because that takes time. Where you can enter your coursework on your own time, we would only do it after we receive your transcripts, after you've submitted. And once the coursework is entered, you are then required to review that work and sign off on it. And if you're not doing that in a timely manner, that can cause further delays. So you have to figure out, is it worth it to me to put myself into a system where it can take up to 10 business days to get my coursework entered and then I have to review it, versus I am just going to do it myself. So some things to consider when you're thinking about timelines. The other thing considered is verification. Verification can take anywhere from same day when you submit a completed application. It goes in line for verification. That means someone is going to take the courses that you entered and check them against your official transcripts and make sure you didn't give yourself straight A's or something. Make sure everything looks accurate and then calculate your GPA. Now, even if you do professional transcript entry and someone does that for you, you still have to go through the verification process. It does not exempt you from that process because transcript entry is just data entry. Verification is making sure that you have everything listed, all the schools listed. Maybe you didn't list the school and we didn't know about it at the data entry point. Now we got to make sure it's there. So there's still that process that happens. And as I mentioned, can happen same day if we're slow. If we're busy and there's a lot of people submitting applications, it can take up to 2 weeks sometimes, worst case scenario. I always advise that if you have a deadline which requires a verified application, you complete your application and have it in for verification 4 weeks in advance. And the reason is not because verification itself takes 4 weeks, but if they find a problem and send it back to you and ask you to fix it, which sometimes might require adding a whole school that you didn't add and requesting a whole other transcript from somewhere that you didn't do. Sometimes people have to request a international transcript that they weren't expecting to have to do from a study abroad program, for example. It's important to build yourself in that buffer room to be able to catch any mistakes, get it corrected, and get it back into the process, right? So it sounds like there's a lot going on. I just did a lot of talking, and you might wonder, how do I ever keep track of all this stuff? This sounds impossible. Well, the good news is on the application dashboard itself, there is a section called My Status, and it has a real-time status for all of this stuff that you can log in and look at any time, day or night. And it's amazing to me that so many people do not look at it because it's kind of your best friend through this whole process. This is a lot to keep track of. It can feel a little bit overwhelming, but when you can check and see what's happening in real time, that empowers you to not only know where things are, but to follow up on things that don't look right.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our episode supporter, Southern Illinois University School of Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree. Ready to make your next big career move? Enroll in SIU's School of Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree. In 1 year, you'll gain advocacy, leadership, and scholarly skills through our flexible, fully online curriculum without leaving your family or job behind. Earn 37 Category 1 CME credits while becoming a more impactful and adaptive leader. Don't wait to take the next step. Apply today. Visit siumed.edu/DMSC and register for their next virtual info session to learn more.
So let's talk a little bit of kind of what those statuses are and what they mean, right? So if you have an application and you look at My Status, when you're first starting your application, it has a status that's called In Progress, which makes a lot of sense, right? You're in the progress of filling out the application. That's what that means. It means you're inputting your information. You have not yet sent that application to a school. You haven't paid for a school. You haven't confirmed, I want to go to this place. You can list some schools on your application, but you can still delete them because you haven't paid for them. So you can change your mind. It's a good place to add some schools and look at their information. So you might put 25 schools on there and just to read their stuff. What are their prerequisites? What do they want me to do? What documents do I need to fill out? What is all of their information? And you might read through that and say, this is probably not for me. And then you can just delete it. So before you submit your application to anywhere, you're kind of shopping for a program that is a good fit for you on the application while you're filling it out. So that's in progress. Once you submit to one program, you might still have 5 others kind of in your shopping cart that you haven't committed to yet. But as long as you submit to one, that starts moving your application through the pipeline of the CASPA process. It doesn't care if you add more programs later, your application is only going to be processed one time. So whoever you pull the trigger on first, that's the one that's going to start your application moving through our statuses, right? So once you submit to one program, your application is considered received. Now, this is kind of a confusing word. I think some students look at this word and think, my school has my application. Technically, they could look at it because you've electronically said they can, but that doesn't mean it's done. It just means that you have committed to applying to that school. Received is an incomplete status, and that's very important because if you have an application in received, that means it's not moving until you do some things. Some of the things that might leave your application in received are we may not have received all of your official transcripts yet. We need one from every institution of higher education you received credit from, even if that got transferred somewhere else. And so you can look on your status menu. If you see them in received, you go, what am I still missing? You can click on transcripts and make sure that those are received. If any of them don't have a date, if they're still pending, then we're still waiting for them. You might have sent them. You might have thought they got there. You might have received some kind of confirmation email from Parchment or Student Clearinghouse that said we got them. But unless they're posted on your application, they are still missing, that means you want to make sure they show up within an expected time frame. And if they don't, that you're following up with customer service right away. Similar with letters of reference. If we have not received at least 2 of those letters of reference, that could leave you in a received status. We need at least 2 folks to finish their letters. You can look on your status, you can click references, and you can see which ones are done and on what date. And if someone's not finished and you're expecting them to finish, it might be time to go follow up with that letter writer and find out if they need any help or when you can expect that it might be finished. The final thing that might leave you in a received status is if you did elect for that coursework entry and it has not yet, 1, been completed, or 2, was completed, but you did not approve it, which is a required step, you could get stuck there. So if you see the received status and you can't figure out why you have it, contact customer service right away. I will always advise, no matter what you have, if you see something that doesn't look right or you don't know why, don't wait, don't ponder, call. Because the faster we know about something, the sooner we can do something about it. I don't know how many times I've had a situation where a student, we never got a transcript, let's say last fall, they submitted, and suddenly they're calling us in February saying, my school is saying that I'm rejected because I never sent my transcript, but Parchment said they did. And we go and we look, and their application says it's missing. And we're like, well, we never got it. Let's go looking. Let's go look in the Parchment database. Oh, there it was. It was there the whole time, but we didn't know to look for it because you didn't call us. So you're still incomplete until February. And that's very frustrating because we can help people and we want to help people, but we can't help you if you don't know something's wrong. So you definitely want to reach out to us if you see anything that might be missing. Finally, we have the complete status. This is the status you want. That means you have done what you were supposed to do to make your application move forward. Complete means that it's done and it's waiting for to be verified, and you should expect that status to update relatively quickly to a verified status. And you would get a confirmation email. But again, always check the status menu. Don't trust emails. Always double check. If you don't see it moving and you feel like it's been too long, again, call, chat, email, whatever it is, reach out. Verified is the best status. That means we have calculated your GPA, we have given all your information to your schools, and now they kind of have the ball in their court for reviewing your application. If you have any more questions after that, you can always follow up with your schools directly. Finally, there's 2 other statuses I just want to let you know about. One is undelivered. Undelivered is a bad status. You do not want to have it, but it does happen, and that's okay. It's we were verifying your application and we found something wrong. So we sent it back to you with instructions on how to fix it. If you see an undelivered status, it is very, very, very important that you address it right away. If you're not sure, if you don't understand the email, if you don't know what you have to do, again, contact us right away. Fix the problem, and then you need to resubmit the application back to us. There are some people that said, I fixed it 2 months ago, but you didn't turn the application back in to tell us you fixed it. Therefore, it's still sitting there. So you want to make sure you get that back into us as fast as you can so we can continue processing your application. And then the last one is on hold. This one is unusual. There's really only 3 reasons it would happen. One would be you actually decided to withdraw your application, which you would formally give us a written reason that you wanted to, so we would put it on hold. Another one would be you accidentally made more than 1 account. You're only allowed to have 1 per cycle. If we find that you have 2, or if you made 2 by mistake, we would put 1 on hold. The only other reason would be because there's a payment issue. We would put it on hold until the payment issue is resolved, and then we would remove it. So those are the application statuses. And again, if you have any questions about a status at any time, contact customer service. We'll be more than happy to help you out. The sooner you do it, the more we can do to help you. So those are the primary mistakes folks make. The last one I'll leave you with is ask questions. If you're not sure, ask. And I would ask you that you should preferably be asking these questions of CASPA. If you have a CASPA question, I know there's a million different YouTube episodes on how to fill out your application. There's a million Reddit threads. Everybody has an idea. I have seen mixed accuracy on those things. The application has changed over time. If something was true 7 years ago, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true today. And even when those tutorials are accurate, they don't have the information about you specifically. If you call customer service, we can see your account, we can advise you on you specifically, and we can help you if we need to help. So I would definitely recommend getting that information from the source whenever possible. And it might be a question that needs to go to your school, in which case we can direct you to contact your school, because we can't answer necessarily school specific questions about your application. But if you're not sure who can answer that, you can always come to us. If we feel like you should go to your school, we would advise you to do that.
Jessica, I'm old school, so I think all of our listeners need to grab a pencil and a piece of paper and take some good notes. You just gave lots of good information from start to finish of the CASPA process. And I think it's very key. Some things that you highlighted were the nuances. And this is so different than what students may have experienced applying to undergrad or other master's programs because, they're sending all information, but the timelines and all the requirements and prerequisites could be so different. So thank you so much for highlighting that for our listeners. And as we come to the last few minutes of our time together, if you had just one solid piece of advice, in addition to all that you've already given to our listeners, what would that be for folks going through this process?
Sure. I think, it can very much, especially for our PA school, because it's so competitive. I think a lot of students can feel like this is a competition, and they feel pressure that this is some kind of race, that they have to be the first person to turn in their application, that it's first come, first serve, that the early bird gets the worm, right? And that's really not true. If I can give anybody some information, it would be, as much as this feels like a lot, as much as it might feel like pushing through the crowd and trying to get to the head of the line might be of benefit, I would say the strongest thing you could do is not rush. Do not apply on the day CASPA opens and submit your application to be first foot in the door. We have so many people who do that. And oftentimes, those are the people who call us 2 weeks later and say, I messed up. It was too soon. I didn't have all the information. I don't know what to do. And our ability to help them once they have already released their application to their schools is limited. It's better to take your time, try to be as calm as possible. Have a friend or an advisor or someone look over it with you. Have a second set of eyes, a third set of eyes on everything, and make sure you feel like you have given yourself the opportunity to put your best foot forward and be proud of your application when you turn it in. I think so many people think of their application as a burden, this thing they have to do, this kind of barrier between them and getting into a program that's like a hurdle they have to climb over. Instead, I would think about this. This is like a big job application. This is your opportunity to brag about yourself, to sell how you are a good fit for these programs that you're applying to. And you want to feel really good about it when you turn it in. And so I would give yourself the space, the time, the research to do that. And a lot of folks will ask me, they go, when is the right time to submit an application? And I would say the right time does vary for different people for all those reasons that we've already talked about today. But if what you're really asking is, when's the earliest I should? I would recommend nobody should be submitting their application in April. Some people, maybe if they're a reapplicant, should in May, but I would say June is probably perfectly comfortable and perfectly early, no matter what your deadline is, to feel confident that you've gotten everything in. So they used to say in the J's was a good time to apply, meaning June and July. There is maybe, I think, one or two schools that have a July deadline. The vast majority start August 1st and go from there. So June is a great time. Take your time, make sure you have everything right, and feel good about when you press that submit button.
I think that the last thing you said, feel good when you press that submit button. Submitting an application that you're proud of is much more important than getting it in April. So those solid words for folks to really think through as they go through this process. So Jessica, thank you so much. Again, amazing information, solid information for our listeners, and just really appreciate the time and all the information that you brought to us today.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the PA Path. We want to extend a special thank you to SIU School of Medicine Online Doctor of Medical Science degree for their support of this podcast. Visit siumed.edu/DMSC to learn more and apply. Before we go, I'd like to highlight the PAEA resource of the episode, which is the CASPA Program Directory. It provides a list of PA programs and allows you to filter them based on different criteria, such as minimum GPA. Join us each month as we speak with leaders in our profession across the country.